Not a great deal of information appears to have been retained about the British Championship that was held in Aberystwyth in 1961. At least I couldn't find too much on it when I did a few internet searches. What we do know is that the men's champion was Jonathan Penrose, who won the title for the 4th time, and the ladies' champion was Eileen Tranmer. But aside from that, it's been difficult to track down games from this event. Perhaps what we need is editions of the British Chess Magazine or Chess from that year. I certainly don't possess either of those volumes. But I did manage to find a very nice game, which I'm going to present to you now, from Penrose himself. And it's a game he played white in against Derek George Ellison. So Penrose kicked off with 1e4, and the opening and the way he plays in this game clearly marks him out as a player ahead of his time in English chess. Penrose is right up there with Nigel Short and Michael Adams as the greatest English player of all time. You have to take into context the time and place in which he operated. And chess in England at that time was moribund. You know, you really had to struggle to find tournaments to play in if you were strong. And you certainly couldn't make a living out of it. Well, anyway, Penrose played c3, which is the main line in this Steinitz variation. And now Ellison hit with f5. This is the siesta variation, posing a direct challenge to the white setup. As you can see, black is already targeting the pawn at e4. And the nice thing about this setup from black's perspective is that when white takes on f5, black's getting ready to recapture. He doesn't need to speculate with moves like e4 at this early stage. He just keeps his pawn structure together and takes on f5. The problem for black is that, of course, if he's given time to develop his kingside pieces and castle, he's got a good chance of an attack on the king side. So what white's got to do is to try and deny him that time. Well, bishop d3 was the move Ellison played, and this is certainly the sharpest variation in this position. And really, already we've got a position which is pretty baffling on the board. If black doesn't want to play bishop d3, he could play either queen f6 or bishop e7. Either of those moves have been chosen. But bishop d3, we must thank him for this, as it provokes a sharp struggle, and now Penrose plays queen to b3. Proving just how well prepared he was, and certainly back in 1961, he was phenomenally prepared, well ahead of his opponents. So queen to b3, this allows black to play b5. Now white's rook is en prise, his bishop is en prise. The idea is to play queen d5. With this move, white recuperates, and he hits the knight on c6 and the bishop on d3. And already it's really a question of what black should play in this confusing position. Now Ellison played bishop takes f1. We'll take a little look at that later. But let's have a look at some other lines here. For instance, black is not forced to play bishop takes f1. He can settle for a somewhat quieter position by playing queen d7. But I prefer white after the simple queen takes d3, b takes a4, and then queen to e2. Just intending to play d4 as quickly as possible. I think it's difficult for black to claim equality, full equality in this position. White's opening the game up. Black's king looks a bit shaky to me. Perhaps his best is knight f6. And now white can get a nice edge by just taking on e5 here. And now bishop g5. I think this is the move to ensure white an advantage here. Of course, modern computer firepower might prove that queen takes e5 is good as well. But after that, I think black can get reasonable compensation by castling and just then playing bishop d6. This looks like some sort of Schliemann to me, or even it could be some sort of Marshall Gambit, where white's a pawn up, but black's got some pressure against the king side. So going back to queen d5, queen d7 is one option. An even more bizarre option is to play knight d4 here. And that could well surprise a lot of players. An absolutely baffling move here, where black fights fire with fire. White's attacking two pieces, black brings his knight in, and the point is that when white takes, black's going to go knight e7. I'm pretty sure that if white hadn't prepared this line, then this could cause white some headaches. Let's just see what happens next. White plays queen e6, or he's supposed to. Now black takes on f1. King takes f1, takes on a4, and now we reach the next baffling position, after knight g5. What should black play here? Maybe it's worth taking a little bit of time out yourself to have a look at this position before we go on with the analysis, because it is very confusing. So white's exchanged down, but this doesn't seem to be too much of an issue, as black has no pieces developed whatsoever. If black tries to get rid of the queen with the logical looking queen c8, then queen f7 check, king d7, and now d takes e5, looks very awkward for black. I don't see any real way for black to be able to get his pieces out and coordinate here. For instance, if he goes h6, we can go e6 check, and then I think black's got to go walkabout with king c6. As if he goes king d8, we have knight h7. To me, this looks fantastic for white, and quite rightly so, because black hasn't got any pieces out. King c6, however, well, that looks uncomfortable as well. White gives a check on f3, black plays king b6, white gives another check, and now knight f7. This was all played in the game Mr. versus Cioccoltia, Reggio Emilia, 1967. And black was in trouble. He went rook g8, white just brought his pieces out calmly and quietly and maintained his massive advantage after d5. The issue is not the extra exchange, clearly. It's the ability to bring the pieces out and coordinate an attack. And it's obvious that white has no problems whatsoever just bringing his pieces out. Let's just see how the game progressed. Mr. just calmly brought his pieces into the game. And if rook takes b2, we have queen d3. The rook retreats and now knight d8. A tactical shot which undermines black's entire position. So, going back, I think queen c8 is not satisfactory for black. So he's probably got to try e takes d4 in this position. And after that, again, we get some baffling lines. White can go in with the check again. Very similar line coming up. Check. Now the thing is, black can go back to e8. Does white have more than a draw? If black comes forward here, then knight f7, queen e8, and I think queen c4 check, followed by the capture on h8, is simply good for white. So maybe e takes d4, queen f7 check's not the best. I think white should settle for knight a3. Again, just get his pieces out, and it's going to be really hard for black to defend this. If he tries queen b8, something different, we just go d6 and bring our pieces in slowly. Well, maybe even white can sacrifice on d6. I mean, it may be, if you're willing to examine these lines with the computer, you can find a way for the black position to work. But knight d4, it just looks dodgy to me. And obviously Ellison thought so, because he took on f1. Well, queen takes c6 check, king e7, and now Penrose was very calm here. He just played bishop c2. This is another one of those positions where black's the exchange up, but he's never ever going to get to enjoy it, because he's going to be murdered. The king's stuck in the middle there with no development before he can ever get to use the extra exchange. And already he faces a very uncomfortable choice. If he plays bishop e2, then I think just d4. Open up the king quickly. That must be the idea. And if queen e4, well, black's more or less got to take, knight f6. We just go takes, takes, and knight d2. With a very difficult position for black to defend. Going back in the game, Ellison played bishop c4. White went d4, black played knight f6. Penrose continued to develop with bishop g5, h6. And now I think, curiously, Penrose didn't play the best move. It worked well, but I'm not sure it was best. He played d takes e5. Very logical. I'm sure that's what most of us would play. But computer firepower tends to suggest that knight bd2 is the way to play this. The most important thing is just to nab that bishop on c4. And according to the machines, black's position is almost indefensible here. Well, they didn't have machines back then. Penrose was operating on 1 horsepower. He played d takes e5. Ellison played h takes g5. What he should have done, again according to the machines, is to take on e5. Bishop goes back to h4. And then bishop d5. Queen c5, queen d6. when black may be on the board. He's certainly not on the board in the game after h takes g5. Penrose strips open the king. He plays knight bd7. Ellison tries to run away. He can't. Penrose simply takes the bishop. And now perhaps in place of queen d5 check, which wins, maybe knight d4 was even stronger. But this is splitting hairs, as queen d5 is obviously very strong. King went to g7, knight d4, black's completely lost, and now queen f7 completed an entertaining game. Ellison resigned. And this game tends to show how far Penrose was above his rivals at that time in English chess. He simply was the superpower in English chess in the early 1960s. So that was Aberystwyth in 1961. And we now move on to the third and final preview video, where we take a look at the 2014 version coming up.